Welcome to another episode of the Agape Purpose Podcast. And today I'm joined by two of our volunteer pilots, Jeff Yannucciello and Kory Elleby. How are you, gentlemen?
Doing well.
Did I say both the last names right?
Absolutely.
Oh, yes. Listen, I sit in front of the mirrors and make sure I say the names right before we start this podcast. And I'm glad you guys didn't see that.
Probably good. That's right. Kory sat in front of the mirror for like 5 hours this morning.
Well, gentlemen,
ready.
I'm excited to hear about your stories. Jeff, you know, obviously I grew up in this hangar and saw you then. You've been part of Agape for what, 20 plus years now at this point. So yes. I want to start off with, how did you guys get connected to Agape Flights in the first place?
Well, for me, it started with Greg. We were at church together, and one person talked to another person, and they said, you fly? Well, I used to fly, and so Greg talked to me, and then he goes, hey, you need to come down and check out Agape. And I said, what's Agape? And then he just says, come on down. So the person that I was introduced to was this man right here.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. What year was that?
That was in 2017.
2017. Okay.
Yeah.
Felt like forever ago.
Oh. So once you got introduced by Greg, what happened next? You met this guy. What happened next?
Well, you know, Agape, as I've been told over the years, you know, there's a lot of people that walk in the door with the leather bomber jacket and just expect they're going to get an opportunity to fly. And I was one of those people that walked in the door, and I said, listen, I'm an electrical contractor. I'm in town. I'm willing to do whatever I need to do to get an opportunity, and I don't even really know what I'm doing here, but I'm interested. And they thought about it, and you called back and said, we'll give you an opportunity, but you got to start with working on the floor and learning the routes and doing gen deck paperwork and load master type stuff, you know, prepping up the weight and balances for the planes. And that's more or less where it started. And then it was maybe 3/4 of a year before they said, okay, let's start knocking the rust off of you and start flying.
And you've been flying for how long before this?
I was the kid, not unlike many kids that started flying when they were young. So I look back and prepared for this. And my first actual flight was when I was 15 and a half. Wow. And the funny story is, in January of, let's see, this would have been 86. I turned 16, got my driver's license after I got my first solo.
Really?
So my mom actually drove me to the airport so I could go up and do my first flight without a CFI in the seat.
Wow. So you were called to flight before you even were called to fly to drive. That's pretty cool.
And I had no idea. I had no idea what I was getting into, for sure.
What was that first plane that you flew the solo in?
I was this Piper Tomahawk, also known as a Tomahawk.
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 I like it. Just keeps getting worse and worse, the name for it. No,
well, that's what the instructors called it.
Oh gosh. So that's really cool. And Jeff, what about you? I know your journey started a little bit before that.
Well, I'm not that old. No, my journey started though here at Agape. Before that, yes, I trained at Moody Aviation in Elizabethton, Tennessee, before it moved out to Spokane, Washington, and the focus of Moody Aviation is really to put pilots into mission flying. And so, interestingly enough, though, my dad had been shipping. He was working for a nonprofit as well, and had been shipping medicines to Agape for mission teams that were going down and working with missionaries that were already affiliated with Agape even back then. And then the director at the time came to like a mission week at Moody, and I talked to him then, and so I was kind of gearing up for mission aviation somewhere, just didn't know where. And then after a couple of years of building some time and experience, God led us to Agape, and that was in 2003. We came down to visit, raised our support, and then we're here by beginning of 2004.
Nice. And that was Charlie Gardner was the...
At the time, yes, I was the director.
Nice.
So I'd met him up in Tennessee at one of those mission weeks, and he's like, "Come on down." Yeah, and yeah.
And then what? 20 plus years, you're still here volunteering, even after working here for 20 years. So,
yes.
So I got to ask, why? Why after 20 years are you still volunteering here?
Well, it's still, the mission hasn't changed. The mission is still to be the support arm and support to the folks that are down there in Haiti and Dominican Republic and the Bahamas. That throughout Agape's existence, that has been the goal, and it's not about one person or one individual. That has always been the same. And that's what's kept me here through that time. Because, granted, there have been times. Maybe we'll get into that later, but there were times that I didn't necessarily feel like wanting to be here anymore.
No, and I can totally understand that. Growing up in this hangar, I got to see the good, the bad, the ugly, and then now that I work here, I get to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it's two different. Like the eras are different, but it's still interesting to see that the mission's never changed. Yeah. The heart behind what we do is still service the people of the Caribbean for the kingdom of God. That's awesome to see. Yeah. Generational, that hasn't changed. Right. So let's ask about a little bit of a goofy question, but I like you guys, and you guys are kind of goofy people sometimes, so I know I'm going to get good answers. So what is something about your role as volunteer captains that might surprise people? Like, what is something unique that, hey, maybe no one who's ever flown would be like, oh, they do that? What?
The benefits. They are out of this world.
Yeah.
I feel like you guys are lying to me on this one. No.
I mean, they're out of this world. When we get to heaven, we're going to see what those benefits are. Actually, I had Mr. Kegi, I can't remember his first name, but he gave me a plaque about that volunteering. The pay is minimal, but the benefits are out of this world. And that, I mean, it's kind of cliches, but it actually is really true. That's what I know. Kory's heart, I think, in that, and I think anybody who's here is that heart to help those around us and those, like you said, in the Caribbean, and we may not know in this lifetime what impact we've had. But those benefits that are there, we just can't see them.
Yeah, you're building up that earthly though heavenly treasures, not that earthly treasures.
It really is.
And Kory, what about you?
Well, being and having grown up in the electrical field, and then going to some of the places that we go to, and I can think back to Time Ministries and we got there and we're like, oh my gosh, this power is so sketchy. The entire 3-story building is fed from like one single 100 amp feed, and the wiring is sketchy and all that. And they have a generator on the roof.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah, right.
He's over here having a cow.
So we planned ahead, and I knew when the flight was going to happen, and we shipped a box ahead so they could go through all their customs and be there. And Doug and I went on a flight, so we land. And, it's naturally it's getting dark there, and it is dark, and we're working with headlights to change this disconnect, did a live removal and replacement of a disconnect right before dinner, one of those things that you sneak in. And it's funny because Time was a really cool place with a lot of memories and great people. And we got there once where they were going to have a group coming in. So it was like the day they fill their van full of food, and they got to get it up to the commercial kitchen. And I remember hauling like tons of heavy things up their stairs to get it up there. It's just, and it's like, it's so true because we fly the airplane, but then when we're there, especially on the overnights where we're actually with the people, we see what's going on, what their problems are, how they're getting through their daily routine, what's next. It's always kind of interesting to ask the questions like, well, after you drop us off the airport, what are you doing today? And they'll always have a really good.
I spend 5 hours at the bank to cash one check. Their third world problems are nothing that what we can really comprehend here. Even second world problems, I mean, the things that they deal with, the bureaucracy and the red tape and the mindset that's down there versus here. And you can't just go in there and say, I just want to cash a check. No, they have to stand in line. They have to wait. And then they have to get 10 different signatures or whatever it is and the hoops they have to jump through just for what we simple things that we take for granted here.
We don't even know. Like, I'd never even know that. And I work here that there's hoops they have to jump through just for something as small as cashing a check.
Yeah. And some of that's changed over the years, obviously. You know, I mean, the dynamics now of the digital age and things that has made things a lot simpler in some regards, but there's still so many daily challenges that they face that we never really even have to think about here.
So what are some of the biggest challenges you guys face when you fly for Agape?
Waking up at 5 o'clock. No,
let's go get Greg in here so he can answer why that happens. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm a night person, so but I make it happen. But I don't like waking up, but early. But I think it is some of that mindset of the way they do stuff. I know in some of the relief efforts that we've done over the years, I just want to like strangle somebody and I struggle to maintain my Christianity because I want to yell at them and say, I went into Cape Haitian after one of the earthquakes and more recent ones, and had supplies on board, and they wanted to charge me like exorbitant fees in Cape Haitian to take supplies down to Lakai. I'm like, you guys just had an earthquake 2 days ago here in this. What? They played dumb. They acted because they're two different segments of the country, and what happens here, you know, doesn't transfer to across the country because the communication, whatever, they're different regions, and so, and I just wanted to like reach across the counter and say like, come on, buddy, these are your people, but so dealing with the mindsets of other cultures is a challenge, and so we would face that with customs, we'd face it with immigration and stuff, but. Again, the missionaries and folks down there, they're dealing with that day in and day out, not just with officials, but with the people, with their neighbors, with their workers, you know. And
we don't just fly the airplane. That's just one. That's like the Doug Heffernan version of what we do. But you know, you find the UPS truck over there. But basically, there's so much more because I've learned, you know, being like the baby captain, right? I've learned that we have to negotiate. We have to argue when they overfine. You know, they come up to you and say, "Oh, today's a holiday. Really? Is that a holiday? Oh, that's an extra $100 today. Really? And I need a receipt." You know, that kind of stuff. And then the latest thing was fool me once, well, it happened twice to me. But you go in to get your stamp, and they stamp it in red on your incoming. So rouge, you know, red rouge. And then on the way out, they stamp a different set of Gendex, and they're supposed to be blue. Well, they stamp them red. So we park the airplane. We have to walk about maybe 150 yards to a building, and then we have to walk 200 yards the other direction, and then walk back to the plane. So it's a lot of walking in between. And so they stamp the drawings, the Gendex with rouge when it's supposed to be bleh, you know, the blue. And so I'm like, it's the wrong color. And you figure that out when you're 200 yards away, and then you've got to go back through the process, and they recolor the stamping and all that. So it's just not commonsensical. Sometimes it's
easy to become jaded in the positions you guys are in, that I'm in, because you deal with this every day, and it's like where am I supposed to get this motivation? And then all it takes is one email from a missionary, and it shows, hey, because of Agape Flights, because of you guys delivering those things, this was able to happen for us. And then you get your recharge. What is that for you guys? Is that when you see it on the ground?
Well, a recharge for me being there is seeing even the handlers that we deal with at the airport, that they're always friendly and they're always happy. And I like to spend my time when I'm over there, the minutes we have, almost in a professional comedian kind of role, because I'll walk up to, you know, the handler and, you know, PTBB, you know, which means little biceps, right? PTBB. And then you'd go, oh, whoa, BB, you know, because they're big biceps, you know, and you have that fun with them. And then I've tried to, and I'm still very horrible, but try to learn the Haitian language and the little bits. And you've flown so much more, and you know so much more. But when you go in and, you know, the fueler, when you're paying the bill, and it's like day mille, you know, day san, you know, 40, you know, toi,
I'm
so,
just nodding like I know what you're saying.
and we're talking
Me too.
$2,300.
I usually turn and walk away when
he's
he's and I'm fine with him.
It's just you
Like leave him to his own demise.
I try to spend time with them, letting them know I care enough that I want to learn their language, and I'm not just this American that comes over and flies an airplane. I really want them to feel that we care, that we're there, and I want to be a part of them as well.
Building those relationships so that it's not like, hey, you're just a handler. You're like, hey, that's my friend. I'm excited to reconnect, grow with you as you're growing in your fields. So let me ask you this: you're obviously have a very successful electrical business here, Sunshine Electrical. Give a plug right there. You work so hard. You're a great family person. How do you find the time in? Is it the value of working for Agape? What is it?
Agape to me is energy and excitement, and yes, I love the smell of jet fuel. I'm not going to lie, I love the smell of jet fuel, but there's so much more because and I'm sure you feel the same way, that we see what Agape does and how it impacts the people that we take things to. And they're so thankful when we're there. It's just awesome. It's so much fun. And I'm just the guy bringing it there, but there's so much more from it coming in the door and all the manifesting and all the front side stuff that happens before we even get out there and get it there.
Yeah, we have that privilege of seeing the end result that, 95% of the Agape folks don't get to. And so it's great when staff or other folks get to go down and see the other end of it like we do. And even when we're there, we don't always see the full end result. We're bringing supplies, and then it's going out into the bateys and to, the areas where the folks are serving. And we don't always get to see that, but we get to talk to them firsthand. We get to see the other end of it, right? And so that privilege is not lost on me. And, also one of the reasons why, like Kory said at the beginning, we don't just throw somebody in the pilot seat, because that really is a privilege. It's kind of the icing on the cake of what we do at Agape. But it is the being able to see both sides of it and seeing how it's affecting them down there. And I think of Pastor Nzunga from the Democratic Republic of Congo. He was in Haiti, I don't know how many years he was there. He was there before I started, and only recently, I think, retired. But, in his nice African voice, I do not know what we would do without Agape. Like, he said that to me. I don't know if he said it once, he said it 100 times, and just the thankfulness of the folks on the other end of us just being that support to them, even if it's just a birthday card or an ice cream cake or a set of roses for an anniversary.
How does your faith grow by serving here?
I think that's our call as believers, is to find where God wants us and to plug in and serve. I mean, Jesus said, if you want to be the greatest, you need to serve. And I think as a church, that's what we need to learn to do and put others first. And so serving at Agape is that drive, that purpose, that the things that we need to be doing. And it's not hard to do that once you're plugged in and actively doing it.
I often wonder if in 1985 God was already planting that seed of, I'm going to teach you how to fly. And then years down the road, you fly different airplanes and you build up time, and then you get married and you have kids, and everything kind of stops, and you're a coach for soccer and baseball, and then God called again and said, I'm sending you to Florida, and then we get plugged in with church, and then next thing you know, I'm going to send you over to Agape, and and it's all going to start all over again. And I just feel like I've been nudged all through that process and had no idea how that was even affecting me.
Ah, dude, that's such a beautiful story. I love just seeing the realization of the path that God sets you on you. It's just so beautiful to see how each of us have a unique, different story through that that brings us to what He's called us to. So I want to know, because again, I know you have so much experience, and you as well. What is one of the funniest or most unexpected thing that's happened on a flight or once you're on the ground that's appropriate that you can share?
Well, I think the seats were swapped on my story, and we were flying together, and still trying to get the rest shaken off. It wasn't bad. No, you were pretty far along at that point. Kory is very methodical in what he does, and it's good. Like he's got to have his
electrician in you.
Yeah, he's like, and everything. And if something's kind of out of whack, he kind of gets a little nervous about it, and rightfully so. That's fine. But so he was still kind of coming along in that point where we're trying to gear him up and get him to the level of flying and that we wanted to, and I wanted to instill some confidence in him. And so we were leaving out of Lakai. I might have started that day in the left seat, and then we swapped over. And then I was like, all right, you can, which we did at times. Pilots would trade seats and just kind of, if they were both qualified or getting to that point. And so we had swapped out at some point. We were leaving Kai. I was in the right seat. And then as soon as we took off, I just kind of like keeled over in my seat. And I was just like, ugh. And like, because we do things as a team in the cockpit. Yeah. I'm like, Kory, you got to do this. I don't know what's going on. And I'm hurting my stomach. I don't know. And I just kept saying that the end. 40-minute flight all the way from Kai to Port-au-Prince. And he's like over there, and he's like, okay. I'm like, I did nothing the entire trip.
Oh, what he's forgetting to tell you is
he'd chime in.
It was almost like he faked his death. It was so legit. He should have won an Oscar for the performance. He was sitting in the seat, and he was like this, and I'm trying to talk to him, and his foot was flapping, and because he was in like pain, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this man is gonna die. What am I gonna do? So he basically. He was dead to the world. I had to do everything in a fight. It was such a great confidence builder. And
we landed in Port-au-Prince. I sat up straight and I said, good job, Kory. And he's like, what?
It was such a horrible, awesome experience. It was really cool.
But as the instructor in me, because I instructed before coming, as the instructor in me, I wanted him to know that he could do it on his own. And I honestly, I think I pushed him over the edge into captainhood.
Yeah.
Do you feel that way? I should ask.
He says I tortured him. But,
he is. He's a CFI, so he's a flight instructor, and he's not the one that helps you along. He's the one that hurts you along to get to the response. He will torture you to get an answer, and sometimes it takes most of a day to get the right response out of questions. I can actually remember the question, but not important now. But yeah, that's just how he is.
Which question?
It was a question about as you climb, in the airplane, how does that affect the true airspeed of the
unladed swallow?
No, it was a very convoluted question, and I was looking in the manual for the rest of the day until I finally figured it out. But it's a long, boring story. But that's how he is. He will not say, "What do you think about this?" and then expect a response, because sometimes he will delay it for hours. Hours. I mean, hours, literally hours.
I love that this podcast has had a King of Queens reference and now a Monty Python reference, all within 30 minutes. That's an incredible. That just shows who you guys are. Like, you guys come to serve. Obviously, there's a seriousness nature behind what we do, but there's also that moment of like, hey, it's okay to let loose. Like, that keeps everything loose. That makes sure, like, hey, what we're doing matters, but it's okay to have fun.
Agape in its role as a support role, and our role as pilots, most people don't really maybe grasp how really serious the job is for us, and how important it is that we take every single flight. Checklists are about everything, and there is pilot flying and pilot not flying. And pilot not flying is reading the checklist, but there's flows, and flows are done first and then checklists, and there's a back and forth. And when we hand over the controls, it's like, okay, you ready for controls? Yep, my controls. So your controls, my controls. It's a very specific, and there's no question who's flying the airplane after those things happen. And even right before we take off, virtually one of the last things on a checklist is, what are we going to do if there's a problem at this point? We have procedures for every aspect of rolling down the runway at different speeds. What do we do at this speed? What do we do when we get to this speed? What do we do if we're beyond this speed? What do we do after the gear goes up? So there's a lot of cockpit resource, communication and management that goes on. And, it's very professional. And that was the one thing that, me coming from the outside world, coming here, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so specific and so professional. And there's a time to joke, and I'll tell you, there's hours and hours of boredom. But there's only so much you can talk about when we're together for 14 hours in a day. There's only so much you can talk about. There's a point where you're just staring out over the Atlantic, just looking out the window.
Quiet, Kory.
Oh, yeah. No. But when it really gets down to it, they always say that extreme boredom is interrupted by very short bursts of terror. When we fly, but there's just so it's so real. And even a sterile cockpit, when we start getting lower and closer to the ground, there's no more funny business. We're here to fly this airplane, land it properly, communicate. If we were in an argument, we've never been. No, I can't even think of a time ever where any of the pilots, co-pilots, were ever in an argument that it's ever happened in my existence. But
it's like a team. It's a team.
It is so much a team effort. And then we unload, and it's a goal to get unloaded, get what they need, get organized, and then get back in the plane, and then let's slow down and get our checklist right, and then get out of there, because we've got a lot of stops and we got to get back. So that's the goal.
That's so cool. Well, I want to tell a story, because I want to see if Jeff remembers this about, interesting experiences in a plane for Agape. I remember, and I believe this would be like 2007, we went down to the Dominican, on a missionary support trip, where we had a luncheon and everything for them. And on the flight back, it was you and I believe I want to say it was Rocky or Rocco.
Rocky.
Yeah. And we ran into some intense turbulence. And I'm just I just said casually to you, I was just like, oh, is this bad? And you just deadpan turn around and you say, we die, we die. And then you turned back around, and I was as a 17-year-old, I was just like, oh, I might die in this. And I didn't realize your humor at that point, but it freaked me out in that moment. And I was like, I'll never forget that experience for sure. So thanks for that, Jeff.
It sounds like me. I don't remember it, but sure, I won't deny that. I remember another trip we had. I was thinking if I would fit this in or not. It was another trip I took my youth group from our church up in Bradenton at the time. And I wasn't actually flying. So there was 6 of us, and we were in the caravan still. And I said, hey guys, watch this. Everybody kind of just one by one come back to the back of the plane. And then let's all walk forward to the front of the plane and then back. And the pilot, Bob Muir, he looked back because it just messed up his whole controls just by all of us moving back and forth.
That is so awesome.
Just goofing around. But yeah, there's a time for having fun but yes, I'm an acquired taste to my humor. So
I just wanted Kory to feel like he's not the only one he bullies after a while.
No, I torture everybody equally.
Equally.
I'm not discriminatory on that.
He's an equal opportunity bully. I got you now. So I kind of want to start wrapping things up. So what would be advice that you'd give to someone who feels the nudge to get involved but doesn't know where to start?
Just come down. I mean, there's plenty of opportunities here at the hangar to get started. If it's Agape that you want to be involved with, I think whether it's Agape or not, being involved in ministry is what we're called to do as believers. So you're just not supposed to sit by and just watch the world go by. And so come down to Agape. I'm sure I'm saying this now as a non-staff person, but come get involved. Because I think there is. I think there's always an opportunity to find a place here to get involved, like Kory did. Start off, whether it's loading boxes or inventorying cargo or helping out in the office. There's places to get involved, and then as you get rolling, a car can't turn if it's sitting still, but you can find a direction. And God can move you in the right direction once you start moving. And so just getting the wheels rolling by coming in and saying, hey, how can I help? How can I serve?
Yeah, just get off the couch, basically. I like that. That's simple. If you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice before you took your first mission flight, what would it be?
Gosh.
I know, you guys, that's a long time ago for you guys, but...
oh, my goodness. To go back and think about missionary flying that first flight, honestly, when it first was introduced, here's an opportunity, you might be able to pursue this. It sounded really interesting, and then I knew I wanted to fly, and then I didn't really understand what I was getting into, and honestly, there's just days now when it's like I still don't know what I got into, and there's still amazing moments of, I can't believe this happened today, and this is really awesome. But, this is segueing into another thought I had, and there's been more than, and I'm sure this has happened to you too, but in Haiti, the plane's empty, and we're getting ready to go, and this happened more in Port-au-Prince, but there would be a guy at the airport, a handler of some sort, and he'd say, can I jump in the back of the plane? And I'm like, what do you mean, jump in the back of this plane? Yeah. Can you take me to Miami? They just hear Miami. They think we're going to Miami. We're not. But they will literally jump on the plane right now because they need to escape. And it's just, it's so sad of a story. And there was one other story where, typical me, how you doing? And he would say, not so good today. And I'm like, what happened? He goes, the roof of my house is gone. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And you realize it's not a roof like a brick and mortar house with, the wood studs and, the shingles. And we're talking a piece of tin or multiple pieces of tin that are assembled, and the windstorm and his roof is gone. I mean, just, there's so much that I didn't really realize I was getting into. And then the overnight trips, as much as I loathe the overnight trips, but I know they're good for my soul. And I learned so much. And I have so much connectivity with all the people that we've met that I actually love going on them. I hate going on them, but I love going on them.
Hate being away because there's so much to do here, but being there, I've seen kids grow from, this high, and now they're married with their own kids, and talking airplanes with the Johnson boys and back in the day. And there is a lifetime now that I've seen of growth. But I think what I would say to myself is that be in the moment, because the thing you're doing right now is really what matters. You can't worry about tomorrow, what happened in the past, but like right now, what you're doing is what matters most. And so, like, if it's this flight, then be on this flight. Don't be somewhere else. Don't get caught up in, well, what's going to happen next week, next month, next year. If you're serving, if you're doing what God wants you to, he'll guide you and direct you and put you in that point. And when it's time to redirect you, he'll redirect you. But being there in the moment, serving in the moment, I think that's kind of vital. Yeah.
No, what's unique is just hearing the two different aspects of it from about the same question. And I think Shelly, she's kind of like an unofficial producer. She said you got to put Kory and Jeff together because they'll feed off of each other.
Oh my God!
But no, I just want to wrap up.
Do
some rapid fire questions because I just want to see it off top of the head. So, like, what's your favorite place to land?
I like going into Jeremy because in Haiti it is just super beautiful. If I were to pick a different country, I'd say many places in the Bahamas are just super beautiful. Yeah.
Cape used to be interesting. Now they've extended it, but it used to be like you'd have to land. You'd get permission if you were back in the day when you were flying. When you would come in, there was a concrete portion of the runway, and then it dropped like 10 inches onto the blacktop, and you always got cleared to land on the black. And you saw the planes that didn't because their propellers were like all Q-tipped and stuff because they landed on the concrete, hit the dip, and ding, 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 ding. Yeah, so Cape used to be fun like that. Kai was the same way. It was short, and but they've done some good jobs of resurfacing those 3 airports, Cape Kai and Jeremy. Jeremy used to be hard packed gravel, and now they've paved it. So they've done a few things over the years.
We would have to sometimes fly over, scare the critters off the runway, come back around the land, and then dodge all the poopy bombs that were dropped all over because they would make a big old mess on the airplane.
Yeah, and then I hear Bombardopolis is just a nightmare because it's like you're landing right above the trees, basically, correct?
Yeah, you got to drop it in over.
Yeah.
And Jacques May is a little bit like that too. You got to just kind of skim the treetops and pull the twigs out of the landing gear after you get on the ground. No, I'm joking. It's not like, but you do. You kind of just drop it in because they're shorter strips, and you just got to be on your game.
Definitely.
Again, why we have sterile cockpits, we stay very serious on those kind of. But they're fun. That keeps it interesting as opposed to landing on a 10,000-foot runway at Palm Beach. Who cares?
A lot of people don't understand even, and it's just something that we would talk about. But we actually have a vertical navigation when we're coming in to land in those short strips where we're calling out, okay, we're a mile and a half. We need to be at this between 600 and 800 feet. And, okay, so we got to stay in this. So we're doing an automated verbal communication of where we need to be. All right, you're coming up on a mile. You need to be at 500 feet. So if you're at 700, you're too high. You need to pull the power back. You got to get so. It's all about staying in the sweet spot. So when we do get to where we're coming over the numbers, we're able to touch down right where we need to be.
Have that familiarity, basically. Nice. What is one thing you always have in your flight bag?
Well, there's a funny story because my flight bag is actually a diaper bag. And
a man purse.
We call it the man bag. Purse. Everybody here calls it the man bag. And it's a gray and white bag. It's manly. But not everybody else agrees with me, but I can reach in and get aspirin. I can reach in and get batteries. I can reach in and get an emergency ELT transponder if I needed one to deploy if we had to ditch. Everything's right there. So we have batteries for backing up for the headsets because every once in a while they just go out immediately with no warning, and you've got to reboot up and all that. So that's maybe my best story with the man bag.
Do you have a man bag?
No, I don't. I carry I just use backpacks, but for me, it's not maybe so much my flight bag as it is my lunchbox, and it's always got some form of a quart freezer Ziploc bag so I can cook on the dashboard.
I'm sorry, what?
All right, I'm going to interrupt.
No. My story. You've been talking. My story.
They start flying here and they're like, you can't have lunch meat. You can't have any of this stuff because it's illegal to cross the border. So I'm bringing peanut butter and jelly. So the first 30 flights, I'm bringing peanut butter and jelly. And I look over and he's got ravioli and spaghetti. And I'm like, what? So this is alluding into your version of the story. He literally turns the dash in the plane into the oven to warm his food.
I love leftovers. So
goodness.
It doesn't matter what it is. If it was steak last night, I'll chop it up and it goes in that bag. But it's got to be a quart freezer because that's why it don't leak on the dash, right? So it's secured, but you put a little bit of butter, a lot of Tabasco, always a lot of Tabasco, and then stick it on the dash. And if you start it after you leave the Bahamas, by the time you get to Haiti, it's all good and ready.
I love that. Shelly, I can just hear Shelly laughing back here. Oh, we need a Shelly cam back here just to focus on her.
Can we turn it around? She's like, she's trying to hold it together. Keep it together, Shelly.
See, I love this because I always get blessed. I get to hear these stories from you guys and just the uniqueness. I never thought, hey, Greg, can you tell me about Jeff's cooking on the dash? What's that all about?
Oh, yeah.
That's standard.
Everybody knows.
Everybody knows.
And it used to be really great because in the caravan, when we used to take passengers on the way down, we don't do it so much now as just cargo, but we used to take passengers in the caravan, but you'd have the cargo net right behind, or the barrier, and then you'd have all this cargo, and the people had to sit in the back because that's where the emergency exit was. So the first 2 legs, all we could do is talk to them over the intercom. But I'd be cooking up there in the front. They'd be like, What do we smell? Oh, that's my meatloaf. It's cooking.
That is so incredible. Oh my gosh. So this podcast is called the Agape Purpose. I got to ask you guys, what does that mean to you? What is the Agape Purpose? If you could summarize that.
I think I already have in a way is to serve. We are servants to, I mean, we're all parts of the body of Christ. When I go out to different churches and talk on behalf of Agape, it is about, the I can't say I'm more important than the ear, or the hand more important than the arm. And we're all serving the body of Christ. And Agape's purpose is to be the support role for those who are serving in the Caribbean. And that's what the purpose is. It is to serve and to be a servant.
What about you, Kory?
Agape, as I've learned from coming from out of state and coming here, agape really, to me, is the lifeblood and the breathing support system for all of those that got the call and they're doing the work to spread, Jesus Christ all over in all the places that we go.
Yeah, I love that. Finally, I just have to ask, how can people best support or pray for you guys as you're out there on the field, besides bringing leftovers for Jeff?
Well, the aircraft, as they age, their time is ticking, and there's going to be an end life, and there's a lot of consideration and praying for a newer, better airplane that will serve us even better, because the technology and age, technology, function, all those things are very specific, and it's very hard to find the perfect airplane. So we've honed in on, the team and the people that make the decisions here have honed in on the next replacement airplane, which requires a replacement hangar because this airplane's a little larger. And so the best way right now in pray and support and financial support specifically would be to help fund those needs, because they're coming down, quickly.
Yeah, definitely. You have anything to add, Jeff?
Agape
Any leftovers you prefer?
Steak? No. No. I think Agape is like any other parachurch ministry. It really depends on people who catch the vision of what we are. And one of the questions I think kind of alluded to it, is like how is aviation an important aspect of ministry or of such a vital role? And I think that because, as Kory just said, we are a lifeline to folks who need resources and just can't get it. And so the aviation, it's not cheap, and it costs money to put fuel in the tanks, and it costs money to buy hangars and new planes and stuff. And so there's a financial side. That's always something up here at church. But because if people can catch that vision, though, of what we're doing, how we specifically, we don't drill wells. I was thinking about this on the way here. We don't drill wells, but I can guarantee I've carried hundreds of parts of well parts that have created living water, literally, for folks in Haiti. One of the ministries we serve has dug over 500 wells in Haiti. And so, and we're bringing them drills that provide that water to communities that have no other way. We're bringing those resources because they can't just get it there. Haiti especially, DR is a little bit easier to get stuff, but still even then. So getting them those resources, and if you can get the people to catch that vision of how it's vital of what we do. People ask me all the time, if I've heard it once, I've heard it 100 times, are things ever going to change? Well, they are changing, but it's changing one person at a time. And it's what I tell them. You're not going to instantly see a country God good, but you're typically not going to see a country just immediately. They might have a revival of sorts, and it did for a little bit after the earthquake. But, we are impacting Haiti by helping those that are down there doing it and changing lives one at a time. And so catching that vision is what I think is important for people listening to this, is seeing what we do in our unique niche of providing the things and the services that enable God's kingdom to be expanded.
No, that was very powerful. I'm very grateful for you guys to bring your perspectives today. Thank you so much. Seriously, it's an honor to hear your guys and continue to see the hearts of the mission through you guys. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anything you guys want to finish saying? This is free moments for you guys. This might be a little dangerous, but I'm giving the floor to you guys.
Greg, please don't schedule me with him next week. No, I love flying with Kory. It has been a privilege to see him come along, because yes, he's been flying a lot longer than me, but with that time frame he had off, that he was big
raising
gap.
kids, coaching soccer.
He really did have a lot, and he says, I'm not putting him down on this. He had a lot of rust to break off, but I have seen him come back with a vengeance on his aviation, and he challenges me on a lot of things, even in the aviation world, and it's a privilege and an honor to be able to fly with him, as well as any of the other guys that are here. And I've seen a lot come and go, but I think that everyone who's in the cockpit like us is here because God wanted us to be here, and it's a privilege to serve alongside them.
Thank you, brother.
Look at that.
My honor.
We had a high five in one podcast, and we end with a shake like that. I love that. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. Tune in next week for someone else. Until then, God bless.